The radio crackled 3 times before the voice broke through. Static, panic, desperation woven into 2 words that would change everything. We're trapped. 17 men. 1 collapsed building. Enemy closing in from 3 sides. 42 minutes until total darkness would swallow what little chance they had left. And the room, that command room with its wall of screens and the smell of burnt coffee and cold sweat, that room went silent. Because everyone knew what trap meant in that sector. It meant body bags. It meant families receiving folded flags. It meant another mission that started as routine and ended as tragedy. But what they didn't know yet, what none of them could have predicted, was that the voice they'd spent 6 months dismissing, the presence they'd tried to erase from every briefing, the woman they said couldn't lead a unit, was about to become the only reason any of them would see sunrise. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is what they called me. Because this story doesn't start with radios and gunfire. It starts with a little girl standing at attention in her father's study, learning that the world measures you twice. Once for what you can do, and once for what they think you should be. I was 7 the first time I understood the weight of expectations. My father was a colonel, not the kind who pushed papers and smiled for cameras, the kind whose boots still carried desert sand years after retirement. The kind whose silence could fill a room faster than most men's shouting. He loved me. I know that now. But love in a military house isn't soft. It's structured. It's conditional. It's tactical. Every morning he'd inspect my room before school. Bed corners hospital tight. Books arranged by height. Shoes paired and pointed the same direction. Discipline, he'd say, running a finger along my desk for dust, is the foundation of excellence. I learned to pass inspection by age 9, beat out 43 other students with a project on ballistic trajectories. I was so proud I could barely sit still. My father barely looked up from his plate. "That's nice, sweetheart," he said. Then he turned to his friend's son, visiting from West Point, and asked about his latest training exercise. They talked for an hour. About tactics, about leadership, about what it takes to command respect. I sat there, 12 years old, watching my achievement dissolve into background noise while a 19-year-old boy held my father's full attention simply by existing in a uniform. That night, I made a decision. If I couldn't get his attention by being the best daughter, I'd get it by being the best soldier. When I told him I wanted to join the military, he laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Worse. A dismissive one. "Sweetheart," he said, not looking up from his paper, "there are plenty of ways to serve." At night, I'd trace the maps of old campaigns with my finger, memorizing terrain, supply lines, the decisions that turned defeats into victories. My mother found me once 2 a.m., asleep on a book about the Battle of Thermopylae. She didn't wake me. She just draped a blanket over my shoulders and whispered something I'd only understand years later. "The world won't make space for you, baby. You'll have to carve it yourself." My mother was different from my father. Pilots, scientists, warriors from history he'd never think to mention. "You come from a long line of fighters," she'd say, kissing my forehead. "Just because their battles weren't on official battlefields doesn't make them less real." I applied to the academy the day I turned 17. Didn't tell my father until the acceptance letter arrived. He held it for a long time, reading the same lines over and over, as if the words might change under his gaze. Finally, he set it down. I looked him in the eye and said, "I won't embarrass myself." That was the last real conversation we had for 3 years. The academy strips you down to foundation and rebuilds you as a weapon. That's the theory. Anyway, in practice, it strips you down and then judges whether you're worth rebuilding. I learned fast that being good wasn't enough. You had to be undeniable. When they ran at 5 a.m., I ran at 4:30. When they did 50 push-ups, I did 75. No one expects. I learned to smile and say, "I'm good, sir." I learned to carry extra weight on marches so they'd stop asking. I learned that competence isn't enough when people are searching for excuses. But I also learned something they didn't expect. I learned that being underestimated is a weapon. There was an instructor, Captain Morales. Tough as nails, fair as a ruler's edge. She'd been one of the first women to graduate from the academy 20 years prior. The doubt. The constant need to prove yourself twice for half the credit. I'm tired of proving myself, I admitted. Good, she said. That means you're starting to understand. You don't prove yourself to them. You prove yourself to the mission. To the people who depend on you. Get that right. And their opinions become noise. That conversation changed something in me. I stopped performing for approval and started preparing for capability. While others saw supply chains, I saw chessboards. Just watched from a distance as they called my name, as I walked across that stage in uniform. My mother told me later he cried in the car on the way home, but he never told me himself. My first posting was logistics, not because I requested it, because someone decided that's where I fit. Fine. I made logistics an art form. 6 months in, a supply convoy got ambushed 20 miles outside the wire. 4 vehicles. 12 men. Standard route that had been safe for 18 months. Finally, a major turned to me, not because he valued my input, but because he'd run out of options. You know the area. Thoughts? I walked to the map, traced 2 fingers along a dried riverbed most people didn't know existed. Here, I said. Small team. Fast vehicles. Infrared cover. They'll expect heavy response on the main road. We go ghost protocol through the wadi. Extract from the north while a decoy convoy pulls their attention south. Silence. Then that's actually not bad. Not bad. Thank you. That handshake meant more than any medal. Word travels in military circles, not through official channels. Through trust. She sees 3 moves ahead. Doesn't panic. Plans. You want her on your side when things go sideways. 6 months later, I was offered a position with a special operations task unit. Not as a curiosity, as a tactical operations officer. Someone who builds missions that don't collapse under pressure. I accepted before they could change their minds. Can she keep up? The commander, call him Briggs, was a brick wall in human form. 22 years of service. 3 combat deployments. Voice like gravel filtered through diesel smoke. He shook my hand with the grip of a man testing bones. Welcome aboard, he said. We'll see how long you last. Not hostile. Just factual. I didn't need to last long. I just needed to be right when it mattered. The first 3 months were designed to make me quit. Not officially. Officially, I was being integrated. There was one operator, Calcine Reaper, who made it his personal mission to test me. Not through aggression, through questions. Why that entry point? Why not split the team? What if the timing's off? Every brief, every exercise, he'd find the weak spot and push. At first, I thought it was hostility. Then I realized it was something else. He was stress testing the plan, the way you'd stress test equipment before a jump, because lives would depend on it. And I'll be damned if I lose more because someone's feelings got hurt by hard questions. Then keep asking, I said. I'd rather have a hurt ego than a dead teammate. After that, Reaper became my toughest critic and my strongest advocate. When others dismissed my input, he'd lean forward and say, "Let her finish." When plans went sideways in exercises, he'd note when my contingencies held and theirs didn't. I learned to document everything. Every suggestion. Every revision. My name appeared nowhere on the final presentation. The simulation failed. Not because the plan was bad. Because they changed the entry point without adjusting the timing. My version would have worked. Their modification collapsed in 12 minutes. After the debrief, Briggs pulled me aside. Your original plan would have succeeded, he said. Not a question, yes sir. He studied me like I was coordinates on a hostile map. She's smart, but can she handle real pressure? Book plans don't survive contact with reality. It's one thing to theory craft. It's another to lead when bullets fly. They weren't entirely wrong. I hadn't led a live operation yet. Hadn't made calls when lives hung in the balance. All my victories were on paper. I knew what they were thinking. Theories look perfect in climate-controlled rooms. Reality is dust, blood, and radios that die at the worst moment. So I prepared. You don't prove yourself to them. You prove yourself to the mission. And then came the night that would change everything. The night 17 men learned what happens when you let theory meet desperation. The night they stopped asking if a woman could lead, and started asking why they'd ever doubted. October 14th, 2200 hours. Routine patrol in a sector we'd cleared 19 times. Routine is a lie the world tells before it breaks. His voice came through clipped, professional, but I could hear the edge. Building collapsed. Multiple casualties likely. Hostiles moving in from grid 6-7. We need options. Now. The room erupted. 5 officers shouting coordinates. 3 analysts pulling satellite feeds. 2 planners arguing extraction routes. Chaos dressed as strategy. I stood at the back, listening, calculating. They were making the classic mistake. Reacting instead of anticipating. I walked to the main screen. Pulled up the sector map. My hands were steady. Not because I wasn't terrified, but because terror is just information. It tells you the stakes. What you do with that information is what matters. They're not trying to kill them yet, I said. They're trying to pin them. Keep them trapped until reinforcements arrive. Then it becomes a siege. So we go in heavy, someone said. Full assault. And lose everyone, I countered. They'll have IEDs on the primary routes. Everyone else skimmed them. Silence. The good kind. The kind that means people are listening instead of waiting to talk. Continue, Briggs said. Small team. 4 operators. Light and fast. They enter through the drainage access point here. Bypass the enemy perimeter entirely. Reach the collapse site from underneath. Extract casualties through the same route, while a decoy element creates noise on the south approach. Timing? Briggs. 38 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrive. Reaper's voice cut through the room. He'd been silent until now. She's right. I've seen the drainage system. Most people don't know it exists. If she says it's there, it's there. That endorsement shifted something. Reaper didn't give approval lightly. Briggs' voice came through. Steady now. Decided. Send the plan. We're moving in 6 minutes. And then he said something that changed everything. She leads coordination from command. All tactical calls go through her until extraction complete. Proceeding. I watched the screen like it held the secrets of the universe. Every pixel mattered. Every second counted. 3 minutes. Decoy element engages southern perimeter. Gunfire crackles through the radio. Controlled. Disciplined. Decoy element. Maintain pressure but do not advance. You're the distraction, not the solution. Understood. 2 minutes. Entry team reaches collapse site. Multiple casualties. Some mobile, some trapped. We need 10 minutes minimum. My heart stops. We have 8. The silence on the other end felt like judgment. But then, copy. Henderson looked at me. That's a hard call. That's the only call that saves anyone, I answered. 6 minutes. First casualties moving through drainage system. Enemy realizes the decoy. Starts repositioning. They're shifting east. An analyst warns. I see it before she finishes speaking. I'd anticipated this. Had a contingency ready. Decoy element. Fall back 30 meters. Make them think you're retreating. Bias 90 seconds. Because I read the damn reports, I snap. Trust me or die there. Your choice. The pause feels eternal. Then, copy. moving. Reaper's voice cuts in. She's got you. Follow her voice. 2 minutes. Explosions. Shouting. Radio chaos. They're through. All 17 mobile. 1 minute. Enemy at the junction. My breath stops. This is it. If I miscalculated, if that junction doesn't exist, if I was wrong, then, decoy element engaging. Viper 1, you're clear. 30 seconds. All personnel extracted. I just sat down, hands shaking, and whispered to the empty air. They're home. They returned at 0300. Exhausted. Filthy. Alive. I was still in the operations center, documenting the mission step by step. Someone had to do the paperwork. Might as well be me. My hands were still trembling slightly as I typed. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the weight of what could have gone wrong. 17 variables. 17 lives. Any one mistake, and one, a hardened operator with 20 years in, stopped and said quietly, I was wrong about you. I nodded. We all were, I said. Now we know better. Briggs stayed behind. He looked different. Smaller somehow. Or maybe I'd just grown. I owe you an apology, he said. No, sir. You owe them a better process for evaluating capability. He almost smiled. Fair. Then for what it's worth, you didn't just save 17 men tonight. You saved this unit's reputation. Maybe its soul. But what mattered more happened quietly. Torres started asking me tactical questions during downtime. Henderson revised the training protocols using my frameworks. Briggs began every mission brief with tactical lead, your assessment. And when he said tactical lead, everyone knew he meant me. Reaper started calling me Doc. Not because I had medical training, but because he said I diagnosed problems in plans the way doctors diagnose diseases. Before they killed you. The whispers changed too. That's when I knew something had shifted permanently. 6 months after that night, I got promoted. Not because I was a woman, because 17 men were alive to tell the truth. I called my father. It was late afternoon, the time when he'd usually be in his study, reading reports he no longer had to write. Dad, I said when he answered. Yes? I need to tell you about something that happened. And I told him. About the building collapse. About the drainage system. You're saying it now, I replied. That's what matters. We didn't fix everything that night. Some distances take years to close. But we started. And sometimes that's enough. He came to visit 3 months later. I took him through the compound, introduced him to the team. Briggs shook his hand. Said your daughter's the reason some of us sleep better at night. My father looked at me then, really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. Because 17 lives needed someone who saw the map they couldn't. Here's what I learned that night. Competence doesn't announce itself. It waits quietly in the corners until crisis demands it step forward. Respect isn't given for existing. It's earned in the 63 seconds when everyone else is panicking, and you're the only one still thinking clearly. And doubt? Doubt is just noise. Sometimes from others, sometimes from yourself. The question isn't whether you doubt. I think about that night sometimes. About the weight of those 17 lives hanging on decisions I made in seconds. About how close we came to a very different ending. But mostly, I think about Torres. About his salute. About the way 17 men chose respect over ego when the truth became undeniable. That's the thing about crisis. It burns away pretense. Leaves only what's real. If this story found you in a place where you're doubted, where your voice gets talked over, your plans get revised, your capability gets questioned, remember this. They don't need to believe in you yet. You just need to be ready when they need you. Because the day will come. The radio will crackle. And someone will finally ask the right question. What do we do? And you'll be ready. Not because you're perfect. Not because you have all the answers, but because you did the work. And when your moment comes, when that radio crackles and 17 lives depend on what you say next, you'll know exactly what to do. Because you were ready all along. Not to my face, of course. Never to my face. In hallways, the diversity hire. In mess halls, command's social experiment. In closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. A liability waiting to happen. They said a woman couldn't lead a unit. So I led the mission that saved them all. But before I tell you how 17 men walked out of hell on my orders, before I show you the 63 seconds that turned doubt into silence and silence into respect, I need to take you back. I learned to crave his approval by age 10. I learned it would never be enough by age 12. Because there was always someone better in his eyes. Always a son of a friend, a nephew, a young lieutenant fresh from the academy who embodied what he believed leadership looked like. Broad shoulders, deep voice, that effortless confidence men are given simply for existing. I remember one particular Sunday dinner. I just won the regional science fair. First place. Nursing, administration, support roles. I was 14. I stopped asking for his opinion after that. But I never stopped trying to prove him wrong. High school became a proving ground. I ran faster, scored higher, pushed harder than anyone had to. While other girls worried about dances and boyfriends, I was studying tactical manuals I'd stolen from my father's library. Where he was granite, she was water. Persistent, patient, wearing down resistance not through force, but through constant presence. She'd been a teacher before she married him. History. She understood the long game, the way change happens in inches, not miles. She never contradicted my father openly. That wasn't her way. But in small moments, when he wasn't looking, she'd slip me books. Biographies of women who'd broken barriers. This isn't a game, he said. I know, I answered. They'll break you. Then I'll rebuild stronger. My mother stood in the doorway, silent. But when my father turned away, she caught my eye and nodded once. That single nod carried more weight than any speech. It said, I see you. I believe you. Go. He never said he was proud. But he drove me to the bus station himself. Didn't help with my bags. Didn't hug me goodbye. Just stood there with his hands in his pockets and said, Don't embarrass the family. When instructors said good work, cadet, I heard not good enough yet. There were 12 women in my class of 200. By graduation, 7 remained. We didn't quit because we were weak. We quit because the system was designed for attrition, and attrition always targets what stands out. The comments were never official, never documented, just ambient, like radiation, invisible but constant. Can you handle the pack weight? Sure you don't want a lighter load? It's okay to fall back. She never gave me special treatment, never went easy on me. If anything, she was harder. But one day, after a particularly brutal exercise where I'd carried a wounded teammate 3 miles through mud, she pulled me aside. You know why I'm harder on you? She asked. Because you want me to quit, I said, too exhausted to filter. She almost smiled. Because the world is going to be harder on you than it is on them. And I need to know you can take it. Not just the physical. The invisible weight. Anticipate needs before they're voiced. Route convoys through safe corridors before threats materialized. Build redundancy into every system so nothing collapsed when Murphy's Law came calling. And Murphy always comes calling. And when I graduated 4th in my class, top tactical scores, I didn't celebrate. I just noted who looked surprised. My father came to graduation. Stood in the back. Didn't approach. Didn't speak. I deflagged it 3 weeks prior. Sent a memo suggesting alternate routing. It got filed under overly cautious. When the convoy went dark, they pulled me into the emergency brief. Not to lead. To observe. The room was panic dressed as protocol. Officers shouting coordinates, pulling up maps, arguing routes. Precious minutes bleeding away while 12 men sat in a kill zone. I stood in the back and watched them waste time. It was flawless, and it worked. 12 men came home. 0 casualties. I received a commendation that went in a file no one read. But something else happened that mattered more. The men who came back, they remembered who drew the map. One of them, a sergeant named Davis, stopped me in the chow hall a week later. "You're the one who called the Wardy route," he said. Not a question. "Yes," I answered. He extended his hand. "My kids still have a father because you read a map everyone else ignored." And that's when I met them. The unit that would spend 6 months trying to break me, and 42 minutes realizing they needed me to survive. Special operations doesn't work like regular military. There's no pretense of equality. No HR training about inclusion. There's capability, and there's everything else. When I walked into that unit's compound for the first time, 19 pairs of eyes measured me in the same 3 seconds. I wasn't a person yet. I was a question. My input in briefings got acknowledged with silence. My plans got revised by men who barely read them. When I spoke, eyes wandered. When they spoke, everyone leaned in. During physical training, they never said I couldn't keep up. They just set the pace faster when I was running. During tactical exercises, they never said I was wrong. They just found reasons my strategies wouldn't work, until theirs failed, and mine quietly got implemented without credit. So I stopped being defensive and started being grateful. "Show me where it breaks," I'd say. "Help me make it stronger." That changed his approach. He started offering alternatives instead of just objections. Started sitting closer during briefs instead of in the back with his arms crossed. One night, after a particularly long planning session, he stayed behind while others filed out. "You know why I push," he said. "Because you've lost people to bad plans," I answered. He nodded slowly. Every time my solution got repackaged as someone else's idea. Not because I wanted recognition. Because I knew the day would come when being right wouldn't be enough. I need to prove I'd been right all along. Month 4, we ran a training simulation. Hostage rescue. High-value target. 40-minute window. I designed the operation. 3-team approach. Diversionary element. Extraction through secondary egress most people wouldn't see. The brief went to Briggs. "Why didn't you say something during the brief?" "Because you wouldn't have listened, sir. You needed to fail first." Something shifted in his eyes. Not respect yet, but acknowledgement. "Don't let that happen again," he said. "Then don't change my plans without consulting me," I answered. He almost smiled. "Fair." After that, the resistance got quieter, but it didn't disappear. It just went underground. Whispers in hallways. Doubt disguised as concern. I studied after-action reports from every operation the unit had run in the past 5 years. I interviewed operators about what went wrong, what they wished they'd known, what split-second decisions saved them, or nearly killed them. I ran scenarios in my head during every spare moment. Walking to the gym, waiting for briefings to start, lying awake at night. What if this fails? What's plan C? What's the plan after plan C falls apart? Captain Morale's words echoed constantly. The building collapse wasn't an accident. Structural charges. Timed perfectly. The enemy had been watching our patterns for weeks, waiting for the night we got comfortable. 17 men went in to secure a suspected weapons cache. The roof came down 30 seconds after entry. I was in the operations center when the radio went dead. Not static. Dead. That silence has a sound. It screams. Briggs was on site, 200 meters out, coordinating from a mobile command vehicle. My mind went into the mode I'd trained for. Not panic. Not emotion. Pure calculation. I pulled up the sector files I'd memorized, overlaid enemy patterns we'd tracked, identified choke points, blind spots, The paths most people wouldn't see. 40 seconds of shouting. Then a voice, the operations chief, Henderson, turned to me. "You're quiet. That mean you got nothing, or you waiting for an invitation?" Every eye turned. This was the test I'd been preparing for without knowing it. They've been planning this. So what do we do? Briggs' voice through the speaker. Tight. Controlled. But I heard the question beneath. Can you save them? I traced the map with precision. We don't go where they expect. There's a storm drainage system 18 meters north. Hasn't been used in years. It's not on their defensive planning because it's not on most of our maps. How do you know about it? Henderson challenged. Because I read the civil engineering reports when we took the sector. 16 minutes to position the decoy. 14 minutes for entry and extraction. 8 minutes buffer for complications. That's tight. That's survivable, I corrected. Anything slower, they're dead. Anything faster. We make mistakes. Henderson looked at the map, looked at me. This could work, he said slowly, like the words surprised him. It will work, I said. But only if you execute exactly as planned. No modifications. No improvisation. You follow the map, you bring them home. In 6 months, I'd never been given operational authority. Now, with 17 lives hanging by threads, I was the voice they'd have to trust. My heart hammered. But my voice stayed level. Copy that. Uploading route details now. All elements acknowledge when ready. One by one. Calsigns checked in. Viper 1. Decoy actual. Overwatch. Each voice a life I was now responsible for. 4 minutes. Team positioned at drainage access. Viper 1. You're clear to entry. Move silent, move fast. Copy. This is the moment. The decision that defines everything. Do I stick to the plan and risk leaving people behind? Or do I adjust and risk everyone? Captain Morale's voice in my head. You don't prove yourself to them. You prove yourself to the mission. Negative. You have 7. Prioritize mobile casualties first. We'll come back for the others. A pause. Then, ma'am, we don't leave. You don't leave anyone dead. I cut him off. Get the living out first. That's an order. It works. The enemy commits to pursuit, giving the extraction team the window they need. 4 minutes. 12 men out. 5 still trapped. Reinforcements 2 minutes out. Henderson warns. I close my eyes. Calculate. There's a path. Narrow. Dangerous. But there. Viper 1. Collapse the entry tunnel behind you. Delay enemy pursuit. Ma'am, that cuts off our exit route. There's a secondary drainage junction 40 meters west. Unmarked. You'll exit there. How do you know? I repeat, all personnel extracted. 0 casualties. The operations center erupts in controlled chaos. Cheers. Exhales held for 20 minutes finally released. Henderson grips the edge of the table, knuckles white. He looks at me. Doesn't say anything. Doesn't have to. Briggs' voice comes through one last time. Command, Viper actual. Mission success. 17 souls accounted for. Then quieter just for me. She called it perfect. Every step. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I heard boots on concrete before I saw them. Heavy, tired boots that had walked through hell and somehow found their way back. 17 men filled the doorway. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was reverent. The kind of silence that holds more weight than words. Then the youngest, kid named Torres, barely 22, stepped forward. His face was streaked with dust and sweat. His eyes were red-rimmed, but clear. Ma'am, he said, voice rough from dust and adrenaline. We just wanted to say he didn't finish. He didn't need to. He saluted. Then the man beside him saluted. Then another, like dominoes, but slower, more deliberate. 17 men stood at attention in a cramped operations center at 3 in the morning, and saluted the woman they'd spent 6 months dismissing. I stood, returned the salute. My throat was tight. "Get some rest," I managed. "You've earned it." As they filed out, each one met my eyes. Some nodded. Some murmured thanks. "I didn't do it for reputation, sir. I did it because it was my job." He nodded slowly. "Best damn job I've ever seen." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Tomorrow morning, 0800. Command brief. You're presenting the after action. Your way. Your words." "Yes, sir." "And," he added, reaching the doorway, "welcome to the team. Really this time." The debrief came 3 days later. Official commendation. Strategic excellence. Recommended for advancement. All the words that look good in files. Not gone. Just different. She sees things we miss. Doesn't panic. Calculates. You want her in the room when everything's on fire. The respect wasn't loud. It was quiet. Solid. The kind that doesn't need announcement because it's woven into action. When a new tactical officer joined 6 months later, another woman, I watched the team's reaction. They didn't test her the way they'd tested me. They listened from day one. Asked questions. Gave her the benefit of competence instead of doubt. About the 42 minutes when every decision carried life or death. About the salute. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, silence stretched like a held breath. "Then, I was wrong about you. 4 words. 20 years too late. But there." "I know," I said gently. "I'm proud of you." "I know that too, Dad." There was a pause. "Then, your mother would have been proud too." My eyes burned, "I know. She always was, I wish." He stopped. Started again. I wish I'd said it sooner. I saw something in his eyes I'd spent a lifetime searching for. Not just pride. Recognition. Understanding. On his last day, as I walked him to his car, he stopped. "I taught you to stand at attention," he said. "But you taught yourself to stand up. There's a difference. I should have seen it sooner." I squeezed his shoulder. "You see it now. That's enough. They said a woman couldn't lead a unit. So I led the mission that saved them all. Not because I wanted to prove them wrong. It's whether you let that doubt stop you from doing the work. The real question isn't whether you can lead. It's whether you'll do the work when no one's watching. Study when they're sleeping. Plan when they're celebrating. Stand ready when the radio crackles and someone says, 'We're trapped.' Because that's when it matters. Not the titles. Not the salutes. Not the words in your file. The moment when lives depend on whether you prepared for the test you didn't know was coming. You studied the maps everyone else ignored. You ran the scenarios in your head until they became instinct. You prepared for the moment when preparation was the only thing standing between life and death. That's leadership. Not the rank. Not the title. The willingness to carry the weight when everyone else is looking for someone to hand it to. Stay sharp. Stay ready. The world needs leaders who see the map others miss.